House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler said today his committee is going to court to get access to grand jury material in the Mueller report.
That information is critically important for our ability to examine witnesses.
The information is protected by law from being made public, and the Justice Department declined to let most members of Congress read the full Mueller report because of that. Nadler said his committee will also continue to call witnesses with subpoenas if need be in its probe of the president, most notably former White House counsel Don McGahn.
We will also continue to seek important documents from the Department of Justice and the White House.
He accused Trump of committing crimes not detailed in the Mueller report, a charge White House counselor Kellyanne Conway denied.
I'd say that is really big spin from what's been a disappointing week for the Democrats. They thought they can bring the Mueller report to life through Bob Mueller, and as reasonable people and honest people have noted all week, right, left, and center, it didn't work out quite that way.
She also said there was no public appetite for impeachment, a statement largely supported by the latest polls. An NBC Washington Post poll found only 37% of respondents were in favor of impeachment. According to an NBC Wall Street Journal poll, only 21% favored starting impeachment proceedings. And an Economist YouGov poll found only 36% were for impeachment.
There may be an appetite among the fringe. There may be an appetite among some of the more left-wing, safe district Democrats up on Capitol Hill. But there's truly no appetite.
President Trump has not yet responded to the accusations, but called the Mueller investigation today a 3-year vicious witch hunt. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
The press secretary for the White House announced today that the U.S. has entered into a safe third country agreement with Guatemala. This means that migrants from El Salvador and Honduras who are seeking asylum in the U.S. but traveling through Guatemala must first apply in Guatemala. Last week, Guatemala's constitutional court prevented the president from signing such an agreement without the consent of Congress, which is on recess. In response, President Trump threatened to impose tariffs, restrict remittances, and impose an unspecified ban on the country. Guatemala said that in the short term, the U.S. will give seasonal visas to Guatemalan farm workers. In the medium and long term, the U.S. will grant Guatemalans visas for construction and services. And now to Iran. An unnamed U.S. official said Iran test-fired a medium-range ballistic missile today, going about 600 miles from the southern part of the country to northern Iran.
A U.S. intelligence official says the latest test fire was part of Iran's efforts to improve the range and accuracy of its missiles. The missile landed near the capital, east of Tehran, staying within the country the entire time. The country's growing ballistic missile program is one of the reasons the U.S. pulled out of the nuclear deal last year. Earlier this week, Trump stated that Iran's recent moves in the region, including its capturing of a British ship, has made it more difficult for him to want to make a deal with the country.
While the previous administration was fine coddling Iran and placating to the world's largest state sponsor of terror, this president put a maximum pressure campaign on Iran, and you've seen their economy teetering on the verge of collapse for a while now. And when they're backed into a corner, they're acting out. And they're acting out not just on America, but also on the UK with the seizing of those ships.
President Donald Trump and Iranian leaders have both publicly said talks were possible, but there are few signs of that happening anytime soon.
He wants to open conversations with the leaders of Iran, but the fact is he also will protect the American people at all costs.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo stated yesterday that he was willing to go to Iran for talks amid tensions between Tehran and Washington. NTD News.
The White House put out a memo today challenging the standard that defines developing countries in the World Trade Organization, or WTO. The White House charges that many of the countries labeled developing no longer fit that description. The memo was particularly critical of developing status of China, which has the world's second largest economy. The U.S. Trade Representative has been tasked with using any means necessary to change the WTO rules. After 3 months, if the Trade Representative doesn't see progress, the U.S. may stop treating certain countries as developing if the Trade Representative thinks that they aren't. Since Monday, multiple videos of officers being doused and sprayed with water are being circulated, and the president calling on Mayor Bill de Blasio to stand up for New York officers. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the water dousing phenomenon.
Officials are calling this a lack of respect for the men in blue. Multiple videos have surfaced this week, officers either being sprayed, doused, and even having objects thrown at them. President Donald Trump responded to the videos on Twitter. "We love our law enforcement officers all around this great country. What took place was completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Bill de Blasio should act immediately." De Blasio replied, insinuating that New York is already protecting its officers and that the president knows nothing about NYC. But his response didn't sit well with the Sergeants Benevolent Association, which is highly critical of the mayor for stirring anti-police sentiment in the city.
So rather than try to bring peace and bring people together, he takes the opportunity to build upon his base and keep the anti-police atmosphere in existence.
Bill de Blasio did condemn those dousing officers with water on the day the video surfaced. The NYPD has arrested 3 suspects from one incident. However, Mullins said there's another problem, besides officers not being respected.
So we have a total of 4 incidents in 4 different places, and all the officers involved make the same decision. So my question to everyone is, why did all the officers choose to do nothing?
President Trump said on Hannity that it was terrible that the officers would allow this to happen, and Mullins told us officers are afraid to take action so as to not be smeared for doing their jobs, as former New York City officers have in the past. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Advisor to the President Ivanka Trump and Vice President Mike Pence visited the nonprofit Operation New Hope in Florida today for a roundtable discussion. It's part of the Trump administration's pledge to America's workers and their initiative of getting more Americans into the workforce. Operation New Hope is a nonprofit organization with the vision of building stronger communities by creating second chance opportunities for those with a history of involvement with the criminal justice system and reducing criminal relapses. Pence and Ivanka heard from people who have gained jobs that offer a sustainable quality of life thanks to the support, life, and job skills training made available through the program. The New York Times recently published an article criticizing the Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao. At a dinner event last night, she responded openly to the criticism for the first time.
Secretary Elaine Chao, the only Asian American cabinet member of the Trump administration, was invited to speak at a gala event at Capitol Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. last night. She used the opportunity to respond openly to the criticism for the first time.
My own family was recently the subject of malicious political partisan attacks that would never have occurred if our last name were Smith and if we came from England. I've been criticized many times. I don't care about me, but criticizing my family is something else.
Chao was born in Taiwan and came to the United States when she was 8 with her family. The New York Times' article, A Bridge to China and Her Family's Business in the Trump Cabinet, accuses her of boosting the profile of her family's shipping company, which benefits from industrial policies in China. In her response, Secretary Chao said she only included her father at some officials' events, social or ceremonial events, and attended some non-governmental private events in her personal capacity with her father.
Occasions such as these are not unusual for cabinet members. This also reflects a deliberate mischaracterization of our Asian value of traditional respect for our parents, and that's called filial piety.
Told those who are concerned to first be strong and that she will always fight for the community. She also suggested that the Asian community should not be afraid to assert its contribution to America and share their cultural values. Reporting by Kitty Wong, NTD News.
Hong Kong protesters gathering on Friday at the city's airport, looking for support from the international community as the city's crisis deepens. After nearly 2 months of intense street protests, Hong Kong residents hope to deliver their message to international passengers at the city's airport.
Yes, I would absolutely support them. I would.
The communist regime in mainland China hinted this week it could use the army to quell protests against an extradition bill. The bill allows Hong Kong people to be transferred to China to face trial. According to the South China Morning Post, the U.S. State Department expressed concern and called on the Communist Party to keep its promise of Hong Kong's freedom and autonomy. With more protests expected this Sunday, the Hong Kong government is warning people to be careful after last week's violent attack against unarmed protesters and train commuters by gang members wearing white shirts.
We can't rule out the possibility of a large number of people turning up. So I just remind participants that, do take this fully into account, and also their own safety is very important.
Pro-democracy legislators and activists have suspected collusion between police and the gangsters. Before the attack last week, a pro-Beijing lawmaker was seen shaking hands with some of the white shirts and giving them thumbs up. Police arrived 30 minutes after the attack and did not arrest any white shirts at the scene. They did arrest 6 people that day. Reporting by Penny Zhou, NTD News. This week, Google announced that a large portion of its $1 billion investment in housing across the Bay Area and San Francisco will go towards a nonprofit organization. NTD's Eileen Ang spoke with someone from that organization about how they plan to use it.
The tech giant says $50 million will go to Housing Trust Silicon Valley's tech fund. The investment is the first portion of Google's $1 billion dedication for 20,000 Bay Area homes, announced in June. TECH, which stands for Tech, Equity, Community, and Housing, was created in March 2017 to provide affordable housing for those with a low income. Google has been a housing trust partner for several years, but this is its first investment in tech fund. Chief Development Officer Julie Quinn says the investment will go towards new affordable housing and help preserve affordable units.
They're typically affordable to people that are making about up to 60% of the area median, which is like a family of 4 at $65,000 is the high end, and it goes all the way down to people that are relying on public assistance and below that.
The fund will cover all 9 counties in the Bay Area, from Monterey Bay to San Joaquin, but it comes with a challenge. According to Quinn, there is a competition for land between affordable housing developers and market rate developers.
It's a fast-moving market, and it's really important for our development partners to be able to act quickly, and to do that they need fast, flexible types of loans, the kinds of loans that we make here at Housing Trust.
In a press release, Google CEO said that they have been looking for ways to address the affordable housing crisis in the Bay Area, and are proud to be the fund's largest investor to date. Originally, the goal of Tech Fund was to create 10,000 units over a 10-year span. After receiving its investment from Google, they can now exceed their original goal. Eileen Ng, NTD News, San Jose, California.
Twitter posted better than expected second quarter revenue today and an uptick in daily users who see advertisements on the site, driven by changes to show users more relevant content, sending its shares up nearly 5%.
Twitter shares jumped to a one-year high Friday after the social media company showed solid growth in quarterly revenue and an uptick in users who log onto their platform and see ads. Revenue rose 18% from the year earlier, beating Wall Street expectations. But the company warned that revenue growth for the current quarter is expected to slow as it shuts down some older ad formats. Meanwhile, the number of people flocking to Twitter grew even as the company worked to weed out toxic and abusive behavior on its platform. A bright spot for advertisers on Twitter, the number of daily active users exposed to ads rose to 139 million in the second quarter. That's 5 million more daily active users than the company had in the first quarter. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said machine learning improvements to deliver relevant content to users helped drive up this count.
Down a side street in New York, this Armenian-American metalware designer sets out to revive a dying Indian craft, only to be given a priceless gift in return. NTD reporter Showen Rong has the story.
An award-winning designer, and yet so down-to-earth.
They're not castings, they're each put on by melt. Oh, really? We melt the wire.
For Michael Aram, it was always fascinating to understand how things worked.
We live in a very manufactured world where everything looks like it's popped out of a machine.
Aram grew up in New York, but his Armenian heritage inspired him to explore other traditional cultures around the globe.
And it wasn't until I took a trip to India in 1988 that I actually really experienced handicraft in a new way.
During that trip, one moment changed his life. He saw a man who had a shop no wider than his shoulder, crafting cutting dies for the soles of shoes.
I was so impressed by his humility, but also his incredible level of skill.
From that point on, he was immediately drawn to working alongside the craftsmen.
My first trip to India was for me like walking into an Aladdin's cave of craft.
While he learned many skills from the craftsmen, what stayed with him the most is
we have to make sure that the piece has a positive message, that it has a beautiful message.
Touched and inspired by the craftsman's sincerity and support, Aram was given a priceless gift that stayed with him till today.
It's something that reflects our own humanity.
Traditional Indian craftsmanship is special. Not only does it demand high crafting skills, but the process needs to come from deep within.
I always think, what do we do that has spirituality? We live crazy lives. We're all busy. We're running businesses. We're, trying to be creative and trying to advance our work and advance our careers and work hard. But what are the things that we take away at the end of our life?
It's a question that we can all think about. Reporting by Shuwen Rong, NTD News.
Some concerning health news now. Death rates among young and middle-aged people appear to be on the rise, according to a new report from the CDC. What may be the reasons behind it? Let's have a look.
The U.S. is seeing a significant increase in recent death rates among young and middle-aged adults. That's according to a new report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Between 2012 and 2017, death rates climbed 21% among white and black adults ages 25 to 44. And 13% among Hispanic adults in the same age group. While the report didn't analyze what's behind the rise in mortality, doctors with the American Public Health Association say opioid abuse is likely to blame. To reverse this worsening health trend, experts say the U.S. should continue to focus on addressing the opioid epidemic as well as rates of obesity. Experts also encourage a healthier diet, more exercise, and ditching cigarettes and tobacco.
As swathes of Europe sweltered under a record-breaking heat wave, a lucky few were able to find cool relief today. But they had to travel 3,000 meters up a mountain to get to it.
Visitors to Austria's Dousing Glacier enjoyed its year-round snow, building snowmen and taking in the panoramic views. But even here, the sun is beating down onto Austria's Dousing.
You can see that the glaciers are shrinking significantly. I hope that they don't disappear. You can see that they're protecting the glacier from the temperatures.
Visitors are worried about the heat and voice concern for the glacier's future. An all-time record temperature was measured in Germany for the second day running on Thursday, with 40.6 degrees Celsius measured in the northwestern town of Lingen. Temperatures remained above 30 degrees Celsius across Germany on Friday. Highs have been recorded across Europe this week as the continent swelters in an unprecedented heat wave.
That's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.